Hello YouTube friends! Today's project is processing our pie pumpkins, so let's get going! Okay, so the first thing I do when processing pumpkins is I wash all of the pumpkins, just make sure all the dirt is off from being out in the garden. The next part is my least favorite part, having to use a rather large knife to cut the pumpkins in half. I know some people cut them the long way and some people cut them from top to bottom, but I haven't found that it really makes any difference which way it cuts. It's just kind of your own preference. It's just you need to get the pumpkin open and get the seeds and the pulp cleaned out. So we're going to do that next. And like I said, this is not the easy part. There we go. Got it started. Okay, so you can see the seeds and the pulp inside. I'm going to pop off the stem and throw that in my bucket. And then I'm just using a spoon and I just scrape out the pulp and the seeds, saving them in a bucket for the chickens. They really love the pumpkin and the seeds, so it's kind of a fun treat for them to pick through. I'll give them not the whole thing at one time, but kind of spread it out over a few days. So we'll get these pumpkins cleaned out, and then they go on a baking sheet, a cookie sheet, and into the oven. You don't have to be real particular about how clean you get them. Just kind of want to get the majority of it, and I know anything I miss will get processed, blended up, and it'll be fine. Now I used to roast the seeds. I used to save them, and I really love roasted pumpkin seeds, but I don't do that anymore. Since we've been using the wood cook stove, it's a little bit harder to maintain a cooler temperature. I know when you do pumpkin seeds, you have to bake them at a pretty low temp, and it's easy to keep the temperature at a 350 or thereabouts, but when you get down to like the 200s, it's not as easy to keep that maintained. So now that we have chickens, I don't feel bad about not roasting the seeds. They love them and they can enjoy them. Okay, so I had two pumpkins here that are soft and mushy. I don't know if you can see that there or not. It's soft. So these pumpkins I will cut in half, and then I'll take the whole pumpkin out for the chickens to enjoy. So they'll get that whole pumpkin, but the rest of them I'll go ahead and I'll get cut and cleaned out, and then we'll get baking them. Okay, so it dawned on me while I was cleaning out this last pumpkin that I need to save some of these seeds for our garden next year so that we can plant more pumpkins. So I'm going to grab a bowl and I'll save the seeds from this pumpkin here, clean them up, and then dry them a little bit for storing and planting in our garden next year. I'm glad I thought of that before I gave all of the seeds to the chickens, because I would have been a little bit disappointed to not have extra seeds for next year. Okay, so now that all the pumpkins have been cleaned and the seeds removed, we're going to go ahead and bake the pumpkins. Place the pumpkins upside down on a cookie sheet. And if you have smaller pumpkins, you'll be able to fit more. If you have bigger pumpkins, you won't be able to fit as many. But we're going to go ahead and bake these at 350 for about an hour. Okay, so with all the pumpkin that I'm processing today, I am now out of wood. So I'm going to work on bringing wood in while the pumpkin is in the oven for an hour and get this space here filled up. Okay, so now that the pumpkins have been baking for about an hour, I'm going to go ahead and check them and see if they're ready or not. Depending on the size of the pumpkin, it may take about an hour, might take a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and check it since it's been an hour and see if they're ready to come out. Okay, so I'm going to use a fork to test whether or not the pumpkins are ready. And if you can poke a fork through the pumpkin, then that usually indicates that they're ready to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these out and let them cool. Okay, so once the pumpkin have come out of the oven and have cooled a bit, cool enough that you can touch them, you're going to go ahead and peel the skins off. Some of the skins have not come off as easily as others. I'm not sure if I should have maybe cooked it longer, or maybe the skins were thicker and they wouldn't have come off easier anyways. But I'm going to go ahead and get the skins removed and put the pumpkin in the pot. Once I have all of the pumpkin done, then I will move on to pureeing them with my food processor. All right, I got a few more pumpkins coming out of the oven, and then we'll go ahead and puree all the pumpkin. Okay, so all the pumpkin has been baked and ready for the next step, which is to turn it into a puree. So I'm going to get the food processor set up and we're going to get started with that. here, you just kind of determine how smooth you want your pumpkin to be, and that would determine how long you run the food processor for. This needs just a little bit more to be smooth, so give it another go. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to scrape the puree pumpkin into another pot, and I can keep pureeing, and then I will move on to the next step, which is to bag up the pumpkin so that it's ready to be put in the freezer. Okay, so while the food processor is pureeing the pumpkin, then I typically work on the next step at the same time. But I went ahead and shut off the food processor so that you'd be able to hear me. So once I have the pumpkin pureed, then I like to freeze it in half-cup increments. Most of the recipes that I use pumpkin in, it calls for a half a cup or 1 cup. And so it's easy just to have it saved in the measurements that I already need. This year, I am using some little snack size Ziploc bags to save the half a cup pumpkin in. I typically just use whatever bags I have on hand. I bought some snack size bags for a project the boys and I were working on and had some left, so I'm going to use these up for the pumpkin this year. So I take my half cup measure, and pretty self-explanatory. Fill it up, dump it in the bag, and just keep on going. Okay, so I have all the pumpkin in the Ziploc bags in half cup increments, and I ended up with 40 bags of pumpkin. So that's quite a bit of pumpkin that I'll be able to use to make pumpkin muffins or pumpkin pie, whatever pumpkin that I come across. I recently found a pumpkin cheesecake recipe that I would love to try. Comment below and let me know your favorite way to use pumpkin or your favorite dessert, and give me some good ideas of how I can use up all this pumpkin. So now I need to clean up the kitchen, and while I do that, I'm gonna let these cool, and then I'll come back and zip up the Ziploc bag and lay them flat, and then put them in the freezer for the next time that I'm ready to bake. So for now, that's that.